Hello, everyone. I have been receiving many requests from my Patreon members at Patreon. They have asked me to open up one of my older podcasts. This would be from July 3rd, my introductory podcast episode on Jamal Khashoggi, open to all here at YouTube. And I'm going to do that and I'm going to honor their requests. Since then, just yesterday, I published part one on Jamal Khashoggi and his connections to Jeffrey Epstein, Jeff Bezos, of course, his uncle Adnan Khashoggi. The episode is live at Newsbud and Patreon. Here is the introductory episode from July 3rd, open to all. In order to tune in to my series, I invite you to join me at Newsbud and or Patreon communities. Thank you all. This is Cabal Edmonds, reporting with objectivity, news and information with integrity from Southwest Florida. Turkey trial of Saudi suspects in Khashoggi murder begins in absentia. Why? Why now? What for? In 2018, I was in Turkey covering Khashoggi case on the ground from the day one of the PSYOP case. Also, I was the only journalist exposing the total fabrication and lies involving this case. In this episode, I explain who Khashoggi is, what he was doing in Turkey, the fake fiancé, his background with the CIA and the Bin Laden family, and what this fabrication was really about and why, and much more. Trump-Erdogan pair-up by MSM begins, this time on Eastern Mediterranean tensions. As forecasted in my previous report, this is happening and I'm going to explain and provide you with a good example. And I will discuss all this and further in this full report. Erdogan government bans Netflix and 400,000 plus websites again. This is part of the coming bloody riots and designed coup in Turkey I forecasted several weeks ago. In this report, I explain how and why this move pairs up with the pre-designed coming turmoil in Turkey. George W. Bush officials launch new group. They join Democratic Party and they start supporting openly, publicly, officially, and formally Joe Biden's presidency bid. In this episode, I also talk about how Papa Bush and George W. Bush were all along serving and protecting the Clintons' cabal and their deep state bosses. I'll also explain how George W. Bush administration saved Clintons by gagging and classifying my case, which involved explosive cover-ups on the Clinton-era illegal criminal operations. This report is currently available at my own independent platform and servers at Newsbud, and also via my Patreon community. I have never been and never will be identified as a YouTuber. I've always been independent and supported by people. This is why I'm giving the deep state platform, coup makers tool, YouTube, the finger here by using them only as a secondary notice advertisement venue for my reports and analysis. If you want to tune in to this report and thousands of other analysis, reports, breaking news that I have published, join me at Newsbud. or support true independent journalism via Patreon. The links are provided in description section above. Thank you all. This is Cabal Edmonds, maintaining objectivity and integrity in journalism via my amazing communities and their support at Newsbud and Patreon. Okay, let's start with this Khashoggi made-up PSYOP case. Now, I had already relocated to Turkey when the case began, the whole theater, Khashoggi theater. I relocated to Turkey in August 2018, and this case was born, the staging of this case, the second week of October 2018. And since I was already in Turkey on the ground, and since from the beginning knowing a lot about Khashoggi's true background that mainstream media did not want to have it publicized, I immediately began investigating the case on the ground, interviewing people, some of these people within Turkish government, some of them former investigators, detectives, also sources from the military and justice department in Turkey. And since I was still in the process of settling there, that's number one reason. And number two, because the case was sensitive for me since I was already in Turkey with my family, and this case was a stage official by the officials in Turkey. I did not produce video reports on this. Instead, I cautiously began this thread on Twitter. And if you go to my original thread, I'm going to have some links for you. My couple of articles at Newsbud website. You will see the link to my Twitter thread, which was viewed by millions of people. And it went on for months. You would see that I have hundreds, if not thousands of posts. Some of them may be a bit cryptic under that thread on Twitter. Hopefully they are still there. But I kept my notes. And yes, I took screenshots and photographs of almost everything, every single information, every single photos that, of course, the mainstream media here in the United States, all over the Western countries, and in Turkey completely censored. Now, with that said, I don't think there has been a single journalist, whether here in the US or anywhere in Europe or in Turkey, who has provided and leaked all the covered up information on Khashoggi hoax, the AKA case, as I was and have been the only journalist on that. I'm not saying it to gloat, because believe me or not, I so wanted to network with other people on this case, but there were none. I could not find anyone. Now, I have several topics for this podcast, and I don't want it to be like an hour, 2 hours long podcast. If you are very interested in this case, let me know, and I can have a segment fully dedicated to this Khashoggi case. It may end up being a 2-part or 3-part series, each one half an hour to 1 hour. So instead of going into details, I am going to hit some of the macro information, some of the macro facts, and mainly those that have been really contained and covered up by the mainstream media on this entire case. Number one, let's start with his background, okay? What have they done? This is the mainstream media, deep state, the CIA. They, first of all, have promoted this guy, okay, that they have claimed he's dead, and I will get to that, as a journalist, okay? They killed a journalist. Well, Khashoggi was never a reporter, never a journalist. The only role Khashoggi had with Washington Post was a contributing editorial piece writer. This guy and these editorials that he sent, they were all typed up by the CIA, and I will get to that. He would send 2 to 4 editorial pieces on Saudi Arabia, on the color revolution, which he was working with the CIA and Saudi Arabia on color revolution in Egypt, and all the operations with Libya, and especially towards the end of 2016, early 2017, he worked with the CIA and the Saudi regime, the kingdom, on this whole ISIS creation and Syria. So he would send 2 to 3 editorial pieces written and approved by the CIA. That was it. He was never a journalist. That's one. But the mainstream media, all the Soros organizations, all these Committee to Protect Journalists, CPJ, they made this up as a journalist being assassinated by the Saudi king MBS. And you know that this guy MBS, and I don't like him. In fact, I don't like anything about Saudi Arabia. I have traveled throughout the Middle East, but that's one country I don't want to set foot in, okay? Let's put that disclaimer there and get it out of the way. EUE. I know it sounds like a bimbo, but it's simply disgusts me, everything about that country, okay? So I'm not saying this because I like this guy MBS, who's like, oh my God, I don't want to even get into that. But he has had decent relationship with Trump. And in the past, until this Khashoggi case, he was ruffling some feathers within the CIA and the deep state players because he was not as tough as they wanted him to be on the Iran case, which they want. In fact, Obama wanted that thing, but that was left for the next administration, and they were really disappointed because other than sanctions, nothing really has come off of this Trump's threats against Iran, okay? So they didn't like the MBS relationship with Trump. They didn't like they being the deep state. They didn't like, and they don't like MBS's relationship, mildening with Iran, not being as antagonistic as the previous kings in Saudi Arabia. And also, some of the things that he started doing in this country, in Saudi Arabia, MBS, this was not something that the CIA and the deep state approved. So he was kind of, this guy was getting cocky. Okay. Now, we established that Khashoggi was not ever a journalist, okay? He just sent 2, 3 fluff CIA editorial pieces on color revolution to Washington Post. That is as far as his journalism background, which was none. Number 2, let's dig further. Khashoggi worked officially for the Saudi Kingdom Intelligence Agency. They are equivalent of our CIA here in the United States. In the mid-1990s, around 96, 97, all the way till mid-2000s, under official title. What was his official title? His official title was Liaison Officer for the Saudi Kingdom Intelligence with the USA CIA Intelligence. So you can go and find it. This is not some conspiracy theory. So this guy basically was the liaison officer in the Saudi Kingdom's intelligence agency working with the CIA, and this was before 9/11. In fact, this began during the Clinton administration in 1995, 1996, and this was during the time when PNAC, Project for New American Century, they were planning this big 9/11, okay? And this guy played a major role in setting up everything. And we know Saudi Arabia's role, both officially, but also with their operatives in this whole 9/11 incident. Okay, terror case. What was he doing before that? Before that, Khashoggi was still working for the Saudi Kingdom and the CIA, but he was based mainly with Afghanistan operations and the Chechen Islamic terrorism operations. And you will see in my posts, I have the link for it, and also from some public documents, that he worked side by side with Osama bin Laden against the Soviets during this whole Afghan Soviet war era. And He always was one of the handlers of bin Laden's unit for who? For the Saudi Kingdom's intelligence services and the CIA. And you can see his pictures posing with bin Laden. You will see his pictures with Kalashnikovs and other machine guns together with Chechen terrorists. So that was the background for this guy, aka journalist, okay? A CIA operative, the Saudi Kingdom pre-MBS intelligence officer, a handler, one of the handlers of Osama bin Laden, Al Qaeda, okay? This is until 9/11. Now, later, beginning around 2008, 2009, when the Clinton administration came to the White House, he became important again. He joined the Clintons and all these Soros pro-color revolution, the color revolution designers and architects, okay, and many Soros organizations involved with it, including Soros organizations and the deep state CFR and their arms and headquarters in the United Kingdom, in London. He was at the forefront of handling one of the dirtiest, the most violent arms of, because they have several arms, Muslim Brotherhood. He was an official within the organization of the Muslim Brotherhood. So he was one of the implementers, operatives the deep state used together with the Clinton administration for Libya, mainly for Egypt, okay? And also with this whole shenanigan with Syria, okay? And we know how important Turkey has been, or was especially, on this whole Syria designed color revolution that failed. That was their architects were the deep state, their implementers were the Clinton administration, and all their larvas within the CFR and the Soros organizations, etc. Okay. Are you with me so far? I really don't want to go too much into detail, but for those of you who are not familiar with this guy Khashoggi, I just want to paint a broad picture here, okay? Now, let's look at the personal front. Being a Saudi guy, okay, and I'm sorry, I may have some people from Saudi Arabia, but there are things that I really find nauseating and I have disdain for those practices. This guy had several wives. When I was digging as an investigative journalist, I found at least 3 wives, simultaneous 3 wives. Not that he had one wife and got divorced and then married. No. He had a main wife he has a main, I'm going to use present tense here because that would be more accurate and I'm going to get to that. In Saudi Arabia, he had a main wife number 1, who also has been the mother of his grown children. Okay. Then after his job moved into US and UK, he got married at least 2 other women. The third one was as recent as less than 1 year before he was supposedly killed within the Saudi embassy. Okay? And this wife also is a Canadian resident. And you can see the pictures in my threads because I exposed it. And this was his new bride. In fact, they were still going through their honeymoon stage, okay? They were holding hands, smooching in some of these pictures. And she looked decent. I mean, she looked like a good-looking woman, right? Why am I bringing this up? Number 1, this guy had 3 wives. Number 2, this guy was known as a party animals for these deep state networks, including Epstein's related gatherings, okay? A lot of these actually were held in London, in the suburbs of London. And this guy, number 1, this being Khashoggi, was a gambler, okay? He went to Monte Carlo a lot. He was at Las Vegas, okay? So he was not like a pious Muslim guy with 3 wives. No, he was a scumbag, okay? That's the best way to put it. He is a scumbag. And these sex parties with all sorts of the bunnies from various porno magazines, etc. I mean, underage, this woman, like a Filipinos, underage Filipinos being brought to these parties. I don't want to get into some of the details here. He was a player within the sex parties, okay? He was a heavy drinker. And he was a gambler, all right? That was his. But then you would see him pose as really in the Saudi style outfits, and pose with his beard among the religious people, Muslim Brotherhood leaders, and posing as a very conservative, Sharia oriented Muslim. And he was not, okay? But this is how CIA operatives work. They can be anything and everything as the circumstances or the situation requires, okay? It's like Whitney Houston's song, "I'm every woman." Well, he was every man, okay? He was a gambler. He was sexually deviant. He had several wives. He posed as Muslim mujahideen. Next minute he's there. He's a very respectful businessman. And yes, he had millions and millions of dollars, and nobody can trace and see and find out where these millions came from. It didn't come from mostly from his family, from his background, from his father and mother. So this dirtbag, he's still married. He's still going through the honeymoon, right? Because of all these Syria operations and Muslim Brotherhood establishing a major terror headquarters office officially, but of course they're not going to say terror, in Ankara, in Turkey, he, together with some of his protege from London's office for George Soros, relocated. Okay, he was not. The mainstream media said he went to Turkey because he wanted to go to Saudi Arabia and get permit to marry this fiance, which I'm gonna get to. Number one, as if they don't have Saudi embassies in the US, why would you get up from the US, pack? If you go direct to Istanbul, that's at least 13 hours, okay, with all the expense. And then to go to an embassy or a consulate to obtain marriage license. You don't do that. We have Saudi consulates and embassies here in the US. Of course, they don't have to do these kinds of thorough design with the mainstream media. All they have to do is to say and tell the lies and repeat it 40 times, and it becomes the gospel truth, okay? Well, he relocated. He moved to Turkey. He got a citizenship residency/residency in Turkey. He established a business office, in fact, 2 business offices, and he became part of the executive leadership of this Muslim Brotherhood office headquarters in Ankara. And while he was living in Turkey for almost a year, he took many trips to US, for meetings, and his last trip was to London, meeting with Soros larvas and the CFR on Syria-related, ISIS-related operations that they were also carrying it out via their Turkey base, okay? So that's why he was in Turkey. Now, the fiancé, there is no proof that these people were engaged. In fact, there's no proof that this woman actually is a woman. There are rumors that actually she's not even a woman, okay? The pictures you have seen. Number 3, this so-called woman's, and they disappeared later from the Twitter, but I took screenshots. This woman was working with Soros organizations, okay, from their Turkey base, but affiliated with their London's office on ISIS creation and heavily involved in the color revolution, both in Egypt and in Syria operations, okay? And I gathered some of these previous communications, online communications she had posted, and then lo and behold, they started disappearing. And this is again while I was in Turkey. The other thing is this woman also, I found direct links. These are not kind of a third degree links, but direct links to the Gulen, Fethullah Gulen, CIA stooge, this religious figure who is in exile in the United States, resides in Pennsylvania, and runs the biggest charter school operations in the United States. This terrorist guy, this Islamic terrorist guy, Gulen, with his net worth currently valued over $28 billion. Because this guy basically as rich as Soros, okay? Let me put it that way, but of course you won't hear mainstream media talk about him that much, except those brief periods when it's related to Turkey requesting his extradition. Again, I don't want to go into too much details and make you dizzy, especially those of you who are not very into geopolitical developments and these kinds of international figures, it may come as some confusing, too much information overload at one time. But as I've said, I can do an episode on that. So this is this guy's background. This is who this guy was. The fiance was fake. And as far as the incident goes, okay, the criminal justice system in the US and elsewhere in the world operates, because I have a degree, master's degree. I have criminal justice, criminal psychology degrees. I work with the FBI. I worked as a CASA, court-appointed special advocate. I worked as a guardian ad litem investigating sexual abuse cases. Any criminal justice, investigative police work that you ever have, they have this time they put, sometimes it's 5 years, sometimes as long as 10 years, that you can't declare a person dead, let alone murdered, unless there is a body of the murdered person. Evidence such as blood and DNA. Let's say you find lots of blood and DNA. A direct witness who actually witnessed the death and has gone officially without any coercion saying, yes, I saw this person being murdered. And sometimes they even take lie detector tests. Once you have those elements, you can say a person has been killed or has died, okay? Unless you have those, you always classify the person as missing. Okay, unsolved case of a missing person. The missing person status will stay with you for almost 10 years here in the US. It's no different than Turkey. Now, in the case of this guy, Khashoggi, they never found any body. They never found any body parts. They never found any blood. They never found any DNA evidence whatsoever in any of those so-called alleged crime scenes or crime locations. Okay. That's number one, zero evidence of this guy dying. Number two, they never had a direct witness, okay, coming and saying, yes, I saw this person murdered. Never happened. It's not there, okay? What they have had made up tape recordings saying these were recorded from the embassy, the Saudi consulate where he was murdered. These are all made up. They are all hoax. They are all fake, okay? The fiancé was never a fiancé. That is completely fake. Now you're going to say, how come there are people within MBS, okay, Kingdom's security people who confessed to this crime, okay, who said, yes, we did it. That was coerced. They are part of this, let's call it the operation, okay, with that operation, and I'm going to talk from the Turkey side as well. MBS was pissing off the CIA, okay, the Clintons, the deep state, all right? And they wanted to either eliminate MBS, okay, or put such a fear of God or the fear of deep state into MBS that he will back off and get in line, okay, and become supportive of the plans against Iran and other operations that they want to use, the deep state wants to use, the CIA wants to use Saudi Arabia for, because he was getting cocky. They didn't have to really remove him, okay, because he backed off. There were people within his administration, within his intelligence agencies, because MBS's intelligence agency in Saudi Arabia, they don't work for MBS, the kingdom. In fact, many of them are Americans. They are not even Saudi nationals. MBS is a symbol, is a king, is some kind of a fat buffoon sitting there, and God knows is engaged in what kind of personal dirty stuff, okay? Those kings and princes over there, that's what they are. Now, the intelligence services and the military intelligence services in the Saudi kingdom, they directly respond to the CIA, okay? To the US deep state, to the European deep state, to Israel. They have nothing to do with any kings. King have nothing to do in terms of authority over the intelligence services in the Saudi kingdom. So these people within the Saudi intelligence agencies, they were part of this fake uh, Khashoggi assassination case. Okay, so yeah, they came and said yes, we were, we were sent, and we admit we killed them. That is not true. But MBS was in such a position that had to basically say, okay, I'm gonna jail them. They confessed, and I didn't order it, but they say they did it, so they're gonna go in jail. This thing didn't happen. Khashoggi case didn't happen, people. Okay, I am as sure of this as I am as sure of the child I'm mothering and the person I'm married to and my name and my birthplace. Now, Turkey. What was in this for Turkey? Again, I don't want to get into details here. These are the things I couldn't talk about while I was in Turkey. I would have disappeared. But Turkey had used to have very cozy, very fuzzy-dovey relationship with Saudi Kingdom. In fact, close to 30% of all foreign investment in Turkey was coming from Saudi Arabia. This was before MBS, okay? And Turkey's financial system has been so dependent on Saudi prince and kings and their companies' investments. They come and they bought so much real estate lands in Turkey. Okay, I mean, they own Turkey in many ways. Then came MBS. And with MBS and his buffoon ego clashing with the ego of the president in Turkey, Erdogan, so they had a fallout. Okay, Turkey and Saudi Kingdom, they had a major fallout. And with that, Saudi Arabia under MBS, they started pulling a lot of these investments out. And because Saudi Kingdom has so much influence over the UAE, that's the United Arab Emirates, okay, like Dubai and etc., Bahrain, these are all the little babies of Saudi Kingdom, okay? They have their own kings and princes and all this stuff, but, and there are thousands of them, because they make babies with 4 or 5 wives, like, I don't know, 25, 30 per king, and princes, so they all become prince and kings. They're all part of the Saudi Kingdom's influence, other than Qatar, and Qatar still has been investing, and Qatar is nothing as far as money reach is concerned when you compare UAE and Saudi Kingdom together. So Turkey economy there has been destroyed because of Saudi and their UAE partners taking out and blacking out Turkey, okay? Blacklisting Turkey because of the fallout between their ego guy and the Turkey's ego guy. Now, why Turkey wanted to be part of this? Why Turkey wanted to go along with this intelligence operation, the CIA, okay, and the United Kingdom's MI6 was there was one thing for Turkey promised. Turkey also would use this information to blackmail, and this is the president, the administration, the current administration there. They would blackmail MBS, either see MBS fall, okay, that was plan B. If he doesn't get in line, we would have him removed with Khashoggi case, which they didn't have to go that far. And if MBS felt it was going to be another Muslim Brotherhood extension, and Turkey was going to get all those hundreds of billions of dollars back to Turkey from UAE and Saudi. So that was if MBS was removed. If not, Turkey really believed that Turkey can also engage in blackmail against MBS, and with blackmail get those investments back. That was the number one driving force behind Turkey going along with this theater stage setup called the Khashoggi assassination. And that didn't happen. You know why? Because MBS backed off from the deep state's goals, okay, and that is the CIA, CFR, all the color revolution, everything that has to do with Syria, and probably a promising I'm gonna continue my predecessors' footstep, and I'm gonna continue on their footsteps, and I'm going to help you with your Iran operations. But he didn't go along with Erdogan's and Turkey's blackmail and pressures that screw you, I'm not going to put the money there, and I'm going to have all my UAE countries still blacklisting you. So just like with Syria, because Turkey became a base for Clintons and they were promised a lot of things and they were left to pick up the pieces by themselves, it happened with this MBS and Khashoggi incidents, case, the hoax, the stage shenanigan, all of it false, all of it made up. without getting a penny, and they are feeling the burn. That's why this article, that's why now Turkey, being so desperate, they are holding their own trials to put those people, MBS's people, including MBS, the king, on trial in absentia. Like, first of all, there is no such a thing. You can't do anything like that. They can't arrest anyone. They can't jail anyone. And whatever they come up with their kangaroo court, okay, is not going to go anywhere. It's for show only. But they are in this pathetic position. They are in the pathetic position. They are out of ways to blackmail Saudi Arabia and the UAE, okay? They are out of ways. And this is during the time when they are facing the coming riots and coup. And this is some pathetic attempt to put on a show, maybe grab some international headlines, but nothing is going to come out of it. That is my 35-minute long Khashoggi part. And because this ended up being long, I'm going to try to get the other ones not as long-winded. Okay, number 2. I kept telling you, I said once this Bolton thing happens, okay, and some of these warm up for riots happening, one of the things you're going to see after this Bolton's made up book and allegations, you're going to see the mainstream media coming up with all these headlines, pairing up Trump and Erdogan. Well, these tensions between Turkey versus Greece and Israel and Egypt and Germany on the Eastern Mediterranean pipeline politics has been going on for years. But with Bolton's, prelude, now I made one of them as an example, and it's on this preview section. You will see the slide, you will see the article. What do you see? Trump, Erdogan are the cause of all these shenanigans and tensions and being on the brink of the war on the Eastern Mediterranean pipeline issues. I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with Trump. It doesn't have anything to do. But if you go and read the article, you're going to see all the reference, of course, in these articles to Bolton saying, well, because if Trump doesn't support Erdogan and he doesn't give Erdogan all this courage, and say, I've got your back, buddy, okay? If Trump doesn't do that, if he didn't do that, Erdogan wouldn't dare standing up to Egypt and Israel and Germany and France and Greece. Therefore, it is because of Trump. And again, this was more than 2 weeks ago, and I talked to you about this, and I just wanted it to come to your attention. That's exactly what now they are doing. Every time Erdogan, excuse my language, farts, is going to be Trump involved in this, whatever it is, the incidents. And now you see it with the Eastern Mediterranean. Trump and Erdogan, the two dictators, are the cause of all these are the causes of these tensions on the Eastern Mediterranean front. And this thing is going to escalate. I told you to keep an eye on that, but also other issues that involves Turkey with Libya and what Turkey is doing Libya. Again, with all of these headlines, headlines with the international geopolitical developments, you're going to see Erdogan and Trump always paired up. And it's going to go back to the prelude started by John Bolton. Now, Erdogan government, that's another thing that I'm going to go through pretty quickly. Erdogan government now bans over 400,000 plus website and Netflix. I tell you what, while I was in Turkey, I couldn't get into so many news sites because Turkey has banned them. It's like China. It was driving me crazy. Like Turkey has banned Wikipedia. So if I wanted to get a quick information while I was there between 2018 and until May of this year, 2020, I couldn't even have access to Wikipedia, which is ludicrous, which is insane, which is stupid, which is dictatorial, okay? And they are upping it. With all the new protests that we have seen with the bar associations and the coming ones that's going to involve the feminists, the LGBT, etc., and the unions, in this mode of desperation, the government announces that, oh yeah, we're going to ban Netflix. Nobody in Turkey can access Netflix. Not only that, we're going to heavily police Twitter and other social media outlets like Facebook from their Turkey pipeline, so we can block them. And they went ahead and they blocked 400,000 plus websites. Now, it is stupid. It actually bolsters the coming riots and the coming coup and the bloody turmoil that's going to come. Then you would think, why in the world an administration that is in the brink of all this fuel further dissent and fuel further aggravation, right? That would be a logical question. There is a reason for it. Because Erdogan as a president has surrounded himself. You know how Trump ended up with people like he got Mattis and John Bolton. Now some of you may say he did it on purpose so he can have his enemies close to him, etc. I don't know about all that. But Erdogan, especially in the past 2 years, 3 years, and I went to Turkey, I was there, okay? A lot of people, good people from his administration, he got rid of because they were not yes man. They would tell him the things that were wrong, or they would actually criticize certain things that were rightfully bad, right? Considering his ego, considering some bad people who were already within this administration gassing him, giving him the gas, the fuel, he got rid of them, and he replaced these people with some total enemies, and these are enemies of Erdogan. And some of these people have some of the highest advisory positions within his cabinets. I can guarantee you, as an analyst, but as someone who has lived there, that this decision and a lot of bad decisions that's going to make these riots bloodier and it's going to expedite their happenings have to do with those operatives already entering the hen house, and the hen house being the hen in this case being President Erdogan. And this idea and to do this came from one of those operatives, and one of his top advisor happens to be Khashoggi's partner with the Muslim Brotherhood office in Ankara, okay? And he happens to be the guy, the first guy supposedly leaking the case that he was assassinated in the embassy. And he's the guy who the so-called fiance, the fake fiance, called after supposedly Khashoggi didn't get out of the consulate building, after she paced the whole street in front of the consulate for 12 hours, 1 o'clock in the morning. At 3 o'clock, they shut down all consulates. And this woman waited for 8 hours, supposedly, and there are no footage cameras showing her waiting outside this consulate. Well, who does she call? She calls the guy who is Erdogan's top advisor. He's a CIA and MI6, okay? And he's the one who actually, first person with his newspapers, yes, he is also in charge of all the top newspapers in Turkey, putting forth this whole scenario and changing the story along the way when this case happened. What I'm telling you is, when you see these kinds of suicidal decisions being made and implemented in Turkey, especially during this critical time period, you know that it is one of those operatives, top-level advisors who have penetrated the hen house, in this case, Erdogan's house. Bad move. Finally, the headline says George W. Bush ex-officials, these are all from George W. Bush administration, they launch new group and there are 40 of them, okay, and they joined the Democratic Party and they officially announced that they're going to support Joe Biden's presidency. And some people may say, what the hell? How could these Republicans from George W. Bush was a Republican, and how could his officials do this? But first of all, get rid of this whole party thing. There are no such things as Republicans and Democrats. I have said it millions of times. I have been saying it since 2002. There is one deep state. Deep state is party neutral, okay? All right? There is no such a thing as blue and red when it comes to the deep state. Why do you think they fund and they support both parties and scumbags from both parties? Look at Congress. You can't say, hey, Republican senators are good, Democrats bad, or vice versa. They're all scumbags and they're all supported by the same bosses. That's number one. Number two, when my case happened, and this was the biggest revelation for me, you know that I am the most gagged classified woman in the history of this country. Nobody has been as many times gagged and classified and had state secrets privilege invoked in their case than me, all right? That is my claim to fame, and it's a horrible, infamous thing to have, but that's the fact. That's a fact that has been announced even by all the courts and the Supreme Courts and the ACLU and etc. Now, I came forward during George W. Bush administration, but what I knew and what they gagged me on had to do with the files I worked on while I was with the FBI, and those operations collecting these files, these nerds, including Dennis Hastert being a pedophile, instead of including the Tchaikovsky, including Richard Pearl, Douglas Fitch, all of that covered and that is Fethullah Gulen, CIA's Fethullah Gulen's involved in this whole combination of files under the counterintelligence unit, covered the time period 1997 to 2001, okay? Now, you would think, or I thought, why in the world a Republican administration is going out of its way with its Attorney General, John Ashcroft, Robert Mueller, right? Gagging me on the information that 90% plus of it had to do with the Clintons and everything that the Clintons and Clinton's people did, whether it was the Clinton CIA, whether it was Clinton's Janet Reno, okay? Why? Think about it, right? That is itself a major indicator of that administration, that Republican, they pose as Republican administration, George W. Bush, and his people and his attorney general, they serve the same deep state. And yes, for serving that deep state, they were there to protect the Clinton administration and the Clinton scraps that I knew of. Therefore, they imposed these state secrets privilege and gag orders and classifications. And if you look at the state secrets gallery, and I publicized this in 2006, 2007, I thought it was smart at the time. Now I'm like, oh, what good did it do? Because I was gagged by this administration, okay, by George W. Bush administration, and later by Obama, including my book, it prevented me from naming names and saying things or writing about them in words, okay? Legally, I said, how am I going to get around this? Okay? So I didn't name anyone in words. I didn't write their names. So I published through my websites and through some of my supporters list of photographs. Okay? And I called those photographs Sibel Edmonds' State Secrets Gallery. Basically telling people, these peoples are involved in my case. Okay? And they were all around. And look at them. Richard Pearl, Douglas Fitch, okay? You will see Fethullah Gulen's people there. You will see Dennis Hastert in there. Because if they came to me, I would say, I didn't say anything. I didn't say these people. I just put out pictures, photographs, and my gag order doesn't include photographs, okay? That was the desperate me. Look at those people, Richard Pearl, Douglas Fitch, right? The architects of PNAX, the Project for New American Century, the architects of 9/11. These are the people who said in 2000 and they all are signatories to these documents, that we want to do these color revolutions, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to target Iraq. But in order for US, after the fall of the Soviet Union, to do this, we need to have a catalyst. Because people, they say, now communists don't exist. We want to spend this money internally, take care of our infrastructure, have a good healthcare system. They can't stomach wars, more wars, right? And we had this period of no wars other than the Balkan Wars after the Soviet Union ceased to exist. And they actually said in this PNAC, in their documents for the Project New American Century, they said, what would make Americans accept new waves of wars so we can go further with our imperialism and do this and do that, right? They said something catastrophic, horrible has to happen on the United States soil, in the United States of America. Then we can get the American people to go along with it. Go read the documents. They are all in wars. These are not classified, folks. They put out this thing in late 1990s, and 2000 it was formalized. And they put all the signatories, Dick Cheney, John Bolton is there, Richard Pearl is there, Douglas Fitch is there. Go take a look at PNAC's signature. All the signature is there, right? They put out this thing, and lo and behold, less than a year later, 9/11 happens, and then they start implementing everything they said they wanted to do. Targeting Iraq, bam. After 9/11. Afghanistan, bam. Libya, Gaddafi, they named it there, bam. So when you look at this plan, the target countries, and saying what they needed to have this operation go forward, they needed 9/11. They put it there. They didn't call it 9/11. Why am I bringing this up? You go look at those people. These people, they're party neutrals. You can't say they're because they have been both Democrats and Republicans. When you look at evildoers like Richard Pearl and Douglas Feith and John Bolton supporting Biden, these people are not about parties. These issues are not about parties. So what they were doing, and this is the Bush administration, was protecting the Clintons, and the Clintons being the puppets of the deep state, okay, regardless of their parties. And a final word on that, because as I said, this ended up already becoming so long, is who was Papa Bush? Papa Bush used to be the director of the CIA, and he was picked by Reagan as his vice president, and then he became a president. Then his son became a president. I have already repeatedly said, I have been saying it for 18 years, the CIA is one government agency that even openly, completely never has served any White House. They don't serve a White House. They don't serve the United States Congress. They're not answerable. They have black budgets. They don't have to answer anybody, any committee of oversight within the United States Senate or House on anything they do. They directly report to the deep states. Those are the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the Soroses of our deep state. CIA is a deep state agency, has nothing to do with the United States of America, its people, its constitution, its Congress, or any party or any president. The CIA is the CIA. The CIA was created by the deep state. Rockefellers have been heading the CIA during its first decades of operations, setting it up. Multiple Rockefellers. And Papa Bush was the director of that agency, okay? And Papa Bush became the vice president coming from that agency. Papa Bush didn't even serve Reagan. And his larva, George W. Bush, had nothing to do with being Republicans or being conservatives or being right wing. These people have no wings. Deep state covers both wings. If you look at it, they open it, and they are the same size. To say, oh, Democrats are more of deep state. No, there is no such a thing. It's all illusionary. This is why I said even my husband quit being a Republican long time ago. He said even what they stand for has nothing to do with the conservative values I hold. And he said, I see libertarians, not the party, they are bullshit too. I'm talking about libertarian with the lowercase l. With their notions, they are the ones who are actually truer to the conservative notions, ideology, whether it's a smaller government, okay? They're not anarchists, they know government. I am not. Anarchists are for juveniles, okay? In a society of saints, which never have existed, if it exists, then maybe anarchy would work, okay? Anyhow, Papa Bush, all that, my case, gag orders, it all comes together. Therefore, to say that I was not the least surprised saying, 40 plus people from George W. Bush administration, the Republican administration, have joined the Democratic Party and now supporting Biden's presidency bid. Of course they're going to. Because those Republicans who pose as Republicans red, they hate Trump. They want to have more wars. They want to target Iran. They want to continue with Syria. They didn't want the Syria pullout. So yeah, I mean, that makes complete sense. Not a shock, not a surprise. They are the larvas of the same people. With that said, and with this long, nearly an hour-long podcast, I want to thank you all. If you have tuned into the preview segments I posted on YouTube, I made it very clear. I have never called myself YouTuber. I hate that term. I've never been a YouTuber. I have never been called a YouTuber. Since the day one, I knew YouTube and other tubes and the Twitter and Facebook and all of them are owned by them. And I've always known that there is no such thing as free lunch, especially in this arena, especially within the internet. Those publications that they put free articles, go and look how many of them gets tens of millions of dollars by George Soros. It's not free. It's there to poison your mind. It's there to create, manufacture, consent. And YouTube has always been their platform. So I'm giving them a finger. When I put my preview, I'm basically putting out the word saying, look, I have covered this and this and this through my platforms at Newsbud on my server, until they unplug, until they kick me out of it. So I'm using them. They have no hold over me. They're not going to make me miserable by saying, we kicked you out, Cabal Edmonds. You no longer have your account, YouTube. I'm going to say, so what? It was an area that I could put out the word for something. I can have some of my other friends with their YouTube channels do it. But no, I'm not going to be dependent on their platform. That is perpetuating their incestuous, despicable, corrupt system. I want to get strong enough to have our social media that we create. It may start small, our own platform, our own servers and mirror servers. And I'm thankful to you, and especially my Newsbud community members. I am so thankful to you for making this happen, because without you, this podcast would not have been created. How could I? Without you, I can't pay for those servers and manage those servers. I can't even manage them because I'm technologically a klutz. I'm challenged. But it is thanks to you. And I'm counting on you to inform others, because they're going to eliminate my Twitter. Probably Facebook has already been eliminated. I haven't been on Facebook for months and months. I'm counting on you to expand this community, to bring in more members, to continue supporting this platform, to help us expand, not on their platforms, on our platforms, not dependent on any NGOs, not having to depend and have dependency on any of these larvas, any of their channels. We can do it on our own. Thank you all. I'll be with you soon. 4th of July is coming. I want to wish you a wonderful 4th of July. Have fun. We're going to try to have a nice quiet one here in Naples, Florida. We found finally a permanent annual house to rent. So soon we're going to get busy of furnishing that place, because we don't have any furniture. We have to start from scratch. I will be with you soon. This is Cabal Edmonds, connecting from Southwest Florida. Happy 4th of July.